Good morning, Simon, and thank you for joining us today.
My pleasure. Absolutely. And eventually, my pleasure.
Not nervous, are we, today?
Well, I wasn't until things started to go wrong technologically about an hour ago. But yeah, I'm fine. I'm fine.
But actually, that's a very good point to lead in with, which is, okay, can you just tell us a little bit about you, your background, and where you're coming from with presentation skills and nerves?
Okay. I started life a long time ago as a statistician, looking at the causes of childhood cancers, specifically leukemias. And then I spent 24 years working as a researcher. And towards the end of that period, I realized that science of what we know is a long way ahead of how people are applying the stuff that we know. And then on top of that, I discovered that I was doing the same research contract for the same government department over and over because they hadn't learned anything from the last time we told them what to do. And it's finally the penny dropped that the problem wasn't the research. The problem was, for lack of a better term, how that research was explained. So people didn't know what scientists knew, as it were, and therefore weren't using that information properly. So I started to do some research then. I decreased my hours at the university, took some unpaid leave for a while, and started to research how to communicate properly, how to get things explained properly so that people can understand it, remember it, and apply it. So I started off training academics in how to communicate to real people, in inverted commas. And then I realized that was so much fun that I created a company that trained real people to talk to real people, or even occasionally for example, we used to have something we called the 2-minute taxi test. And we would do a 18-month investigation at the university for a government minister. And then you'd have to explain 18 months worth of scientific research in 2 minutes in the back of a taxi between Whitehall and Westminster as he drove to the House of Commons where he was going to make a statement. You learn pretty quickly how to get really big ideas crunched in really small. But then it became obvious that the world needed to make better presentations. So that's what I'm trying to do.
So actually just making people being able to talk to each other quicker and faster and more succinct.
Yep, the idea is that the succinct bit I'm still working on. The idea is that a presentation is supposed to change the world just a little bit. And if it doesn't, it's a waste of everybody's time. It might just be a tiny bit of the world that it's changing, but it's supposed to change the way people behave or the way people act or the way people think or something. If it doesn't, then it's just an expensive waste of time. So I'm not evangelistic about it because that's too pretentious, but I'm enthusiastic about it.
Well, at least somebody is, because then at least that way we will get better quality of information coming across, because there's nothing worse than going to a presentation and somebody's waffling.
Oh, there are worse things than that, but yeah, standing on Lego or an upturned 3-pin plug, that's worse. But it is pretty bad. It's expensive too, because if you take, let's say, 10 people in the room, all of whom are on, well, the UK average salary is about 28k. The salary runs, the presentation runs for an hour and a half. You do the maths, you end up with presentations costing anything between 8 and 20 quid, 8 and 20,000 pounds for an hour's presentation, and that's just unsustainable.
Okay, so the information has got to be worth that time then.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you've got a really bad presentation, it's costing the company 8 to 20 grand to get that presentation, that information across to people. And if it doesn't work, then that's 20 grand the company's lost. That's my justification for my salary, for my fees. That's how it works.
So in that case, then, actually overcoming nerves, because that seems to be what a lot of people kind of suffer from. They kind of make excuses about their getting up in front of a whole load of people, but in actual fact, it just comes back down to how do they manage their nerves. So nerves can be quite costly then.
Oh, yeah. Nerves are the excuse that a lot of people use. The number of times, I'm not saying that people don't get nervous. They do, don't get me wrong. But there are a lot of people who say, oh, I'm too nervous, I couldn't do this, when actually what they mean is I'm too damn lazy to put the effort in to make the decent presentation, and I can use the nerves thing as an excuse. I don't have much time with that. I don't have any sympathy for it. But those people who do properly get nervous, then I've got all the time in the world, and I will give them all the help I can possibly give them all the skills I can possibly give them to get them on the floor.
Okay, so you've made an interesting point between presentation and presenting then. Is there
My definition is presenting is what you do when you are a presenter. There's nothing great. There's no great rocket science behind that. I'm thinking specifically of the business presentation, which is stereotypically, let's say, half an hour of material, 15 minutes of Q&A, and then if you're unlucky, people go away and have a coffee and forget what you've talked about. But if you've done it right, then people go away and they do things differently because of the information that you've given them. So it's very often just a question of getting the right people to say the right things at the right time. But when you're nervous, everybody stops, their brain stops thinking, and they just talk, rather like I'm doing this morning, they just talk complete garbage. They forget what they're supposed to be saying, and the audience just doesn't get anything out of it.
Okay, so that's typical, like this typical kind of scenario that you're talking about is like this sales presentation where people end up hiding behind a PowerPoint presentation and death by PowerPoint. Or
the business report or something on those lines. And very, very often, that's the first mistake that people make. They say, I've got to make a presentation, and what they think of is the software. They think of the slides and all the things that are going to be going on behind them. Or worst case scenario, they think of all the things that are in front of them because they turn to face the slides. That's even worse. And they use the slides as a prop, as a crutch, because they're too frightened. They don't go without the scripts. And Dynamic Speaker made a comment there about that. Okay, I'm absolutely right. It's all about being confident enough to know what you're going to say and how you're going to say it. So if you're up for it, I've got nearly a dozen tools that are going to help with people's nerves and things, just to give them some tools and tips.
I'm always up for some tools and tips and tricks and helps and hints and how-tos.
They are dirty tricks, and some of them I've nicked just from positive psychology. A lot of them I've nicked from work. I used to be a lighting designer for dance companies, so a lot of them I've nicked from dancers and actors and the things that they used to do, or they do when they go on stage or before they go on stage, in order to control their nerves and things. But some of them are just so. I mean, for example, the simplest tool that we ever use is called ties and flies, and it's. Honestly, it is the world's most simple tool. Let's pretend that we had a team meeting, right? What we actually had was a pizza and a carafe of red wine, but let's pretend it was a team meeting. And we try to ask ourselves where our nerves comes from. Mm-hmm. And now everybody's going to be different, but for us, we reckon that about 30% of our nerves comes from the logistics. Where am I? Are my slides going to work? Am I going to get there on time? Am I dressed? All of those kinds of purely mechanical little things. And none of them are difficult. They're all very, very simple things. But remembering them in the heat of the moment is always difficult. So what we did was kind of go through half a dozen of our presentations and literally just jotted down everything that we did literally in a checklist, so that before we go on stage, Claire will stand next to me and Pete, and we'll go, Pete, have you checked this? Tick. Simon, have you checked that? Tick. Pete, have you checked this? Tick. And it does three things. The first is that anything that could possibly go wrong won't, because it's been checked. Mm-hmm. And you would be amazed at how often batteries will go flat if you forget them. The other thing is that it means that I, as a presenter, as a speaker, I've got all the confidence in the world that my hardware is going to work. Mm-hmm. And apart from anything else, the last thing it does is just gives just that little bit of ritual before we go on stage, because we always get together in a huddle and do, have you done this? Have you done this? And just the three of us taking a quiet moment together is quite a powerful thing.
So a checklist is a way for you to brain dump and just free the brain up then?
Yeah, it's more than that. You're absolutely right, it is that, but it's more than that, because on the day, your brain's not going to be in the right headspace for it, and you're going to forget things. I've done it. Everybody's done it. I've all forgotten things. So you do it in the advance when you're cool, calm, and collected. And the reason we call them ties and flies, by the way, it's that's not what they're officially called. That's just an in-house joke for the company, because the last thing that happens before I go on stage is that somebody will check that my tie and my flies are fastened. I've never gone on stage without them being fastened. But it was a joke that somebody made once, and it's kind of stuck. So the simplest of the tools is just this checklist thing. And if anybody's interested and they get in touch, I'll send them a couple of ties and flies lists. The downside, of course, is that everybody's ties and flies lists are different. But it gives you a starting point. You know,
try not to have a tie.
Well, it depends on who you are and what you're wearing and what your audience is and all of that kind of jazz.
And as Ian says, manage what you can manage.
Yeah, and what you can't manage, you let go of. That's easier said than done, of course. That's where we start getting into the positive psychology of it. But this is just the pure mechanics of it. Is check. I mean, for a really silly example, on our ties and flies list, we've got a 25-meter VGA cable that we take with us for our big gigs. That's because at some point somebody wanted to put the laptop right at the back of the room because that's where the cable feed was, and I wanted my laptop at the front of the room so I could see my next coming slides up and all of that kind of thing. That didn't work on that occasion, so what we did then was we bought ourselves this dirty great long VGA cable, and now we can have the laptop wherever it is. So one of our things in our ties and flies is going to be, have you got the laptop in front of you, and all of that kind of jazz. Sorry, I'm getting distracted by the comments that are floating down the right hand side. I should find out how to turn those off so that I'm concentrating just on you, Cindy.
No problem, because sometimes the comments are actually really helpful, because I like how Ian's put the twister from the flies free, meaning from the zip to the flies, as in the birdie fly. The bloody thing, absolutely. Dynamic speaker, good point. You manage what you can manage and let go of what you can't. Because to be honest, the audiences don't expect you to be perfect. They just expect you to be useful and worth their while. Of value. Yeah. It's coming back down to making
sure that are you giving them enough value for them to justify their time, energy, effort, and money? And if they are, they will. If you are, then they will forgive you individual mistakes. Now, let's face it: the worst thing you can try and do is try to be perfect. Because if you're desperately going, I've got to be perfect, I've got to be perfect, I've got to be perfect, then your brain's just going to freeze up. No one's perfect, with the exception of my wife. I have to say that because at some point she's going to watch this video. No one else is perfect, and it just puts too much pressure on yourself. Why would you make it harder for yourself by trying to be perfect?
Okay, so how do you actually get people to change their mindset about that?
It's very easy. You just point it out to them, and as soon as you point it out to them, they go, "Oh yeah." Because for me, a presentation is not about a performance; it's a means to an end. I mean, just ask yourself a simple question: If you wrote a report and gave it to your boss, would you judge the success of that report by how pretty it was, how nice the font was, how perfectly spelled it was, how well cross-referenced it was, and all of those kinds of things? No. You would judge the success of the presentation by whether your boss went, "This is good material, we're going to implement it." Okay. Now, the other stuff, the perfect typing and all of that kind of stuff, that you need to do that, because if you don't, it gets in the way of your boss accepting your recommendations and your reports and all of that kind of jazz. But that's a means, not an end. Right. So get it right before you get into the room. Knowing what you're trying to say. Yeah. And that brings me to the other big tip of the day that nobody ever wants to hear. You have to know your material. The number of times people come on my training courses and go, "I don't have time to learn my material," or "I'm delivering my boss's material," or yada, yada, yada. What tools do you have to stop me being nervous when I don't know what I'm talking about? You still need to know what you're talking about. You still need to know what you're talking about. If you don't know what you're talking about, I can't help you. I can make you less nervous, but I can't stop you being nervous, because you should be nervous, because if you don't know what you're talking about, you're stuff. And I've read some research a while ago now, but I've read some research which suggests you need to know between 20 and 30, maybe even 40. So 37 was the number they had. 37 times more content than your audience in order to be able to go sideways if they ask you questions and that kind of thing. Personally, I think that's probably a little bit harsh, but in that neck of the woods, certainly, you need to know a lot more than them. Actually, you've made a very good point, because I've seen quite a lot of speakers. Most people who are putting on conferences, they see a lot of speakers. And you very, very quickly see who actually doesn't know their knowledge and their information. So 20 times, I see them as somebody who knows a thing or two. Mm-hmm. But when they go to the 37 or the 40 times, then that to me is the true expert, because it doesn't matter how and where the conversation goes. They can either relate it back, they can make a good point from it, or they can actually relate it. They actually just know their information inside and out. Don't get me wrong. I say the 37 times thing, that's an ideal world. And dynamic speaking, good point. The scale a lot of people are speaking, absolutely right. And a little bit of me going, well, yeah, if they're the kind of person that's scared off by the fact they should know what they're talking about, we don't want them on a stage in the first place. But I'm being quite cruel about that. But 37 is the top end, absolutely the top end. And let's pretend your presentation goes exactly as you had planned it. Well, in which case, you only need to know a fraction more than your audience. You just need to be a fraction ahead of them. But life doesn't work like that. It's too complicated. So that 37 time big factor, 1.5 is enough for those who aren't experts. Yeah, you're right. Except that you shouldn't be an expert. You should be an expert if you're up there. You know, if you're not an expert, you shouldn't be there. And I know that's harsh. I know that's harsh, but that's the top end of it, and that's what the academic research is suggesting. I recognise that that's asking too much for your average presenter, but that's kind of where we are. That's the ideal sort of thing.
So what we're actually talking about is 1.5 would be okay if you're having to present your boss's material. So you can actually know it well enough and some of the information behind it to be then able to say, actually, go and talk to my boss.
But how naff does it look to get to the end of it and somebody asks you a question and for you to go, I don't know. I've just got the slide deck this morning. It doesn't work.
Absolutely.
But you're right. Or 1.5 times will do, or even 1.1 times will do, so long as nothing goes wrong and you scroll through.
Absolutely. But then we're coming back down to the difference between somebody who's having to do it professionally and set themselves up as being the go-to person on subject, and somebody who's been dumped on the last minute.
Absolutely. And a lot of my clients are people who are not professional speakers. They are people who have to speak as part of their work, as part of their business, but it's not what they do.
Absolutely. So if we go back down to then the people who's not the expert, and let's concentrate on the people that typically then get dumped on at the last minute. And because in my experience, people that kind of pass the buck sometimes do it because they suddenly have a scary moment that actually realization is happening and they really don't want to go on the stage. So they've just sort of like, okay, let's pass it to somebody else. If you're in that kind of situation and you really cannot get out of it because it's the difference between, well, it's the boss has done it, therefore if I don't do it, it's the chances of my job's at stake.
Okay, a career limiting
move. It's a career. We've still got nerves that are involved in that type of scenario. So how would I handle that kind of scenario for my nerves to at least get me to a place where if I do get...
Okay, let's do a couple of really quick hit dirty cheap ones. Amy Cuddy has done some fantastic research recently about the Wonder Woman pose, and I'm not going to go into that now because all you have to do is just Google the Wonder Woman pose, and once you've got past the rather asinine teenage photographs of attractive women standing, you get to the research, and you can read that for yourself. That's just a way of standing in a way that makes you look and makes you feel more confident. Okay. But one of the other tricks, I'm got past page 1. One of the other tricks I use a lot, and I recommend this, I commend this to everybody, is to use your peripheral vision. You know what I mean by PV, your peripheral vision? It's the stuff you see out the corner of your eye.
You go backwards.
Right, okay. Yeah. So when you are scared, when you are nervous, when you're presenting, or when you're scared of anything, your body produces a whole bunch of hormones, one of which, cortisol, narrows down the range of things that you can pay attention to. Your eye sees everything, but your brain filters a whole bunch of stuff out. And the logic of that, the evolutionary logic of that, is that if there's something trying to eat you, you can take in the same amount of information as you did before, but about just that, so that you're absolutely if there's a saber-toothed tiger, you want to know everything there is to know about the saber-toothed tiger. Okay. Now, when you're in a room as a presenter, the only thing in the room that frightens you is your audience. So your brain goes, and everything that you're talking about there is the only thing in the room that scares you. So here's a very, very simple trick, right? A really simple trick. An exercise I do shed loads in classes is just put your hands together like that. I'm just going to turn sideways on the camera so you can see where my hands are. Okay. And then cup your hands. Do it with me. I've got visions of people all over the country doing this now. Cup your hands so you can get a pretend squash ball into that gap. Focus on that pretend squash ball. Keep your hands focused on that pretend squash ball. Don't move from that pretend squash ball. Stay focused on that pretend squash ball. And while you are on that pretend squash ball, swing your arms out horizontally in an arc. I need to get back from the camera so you can see my hands are really kind of wide there. And you keep going all the way back until your hands disappear out of the edge of your peripheral vision. And sometimes you just need to wiggle your fingers a little bit. But the idea is that you find, that's it, you got it. Okay, so you find out where the limit of your peripheral vision is.
Yeah.
Okay, so now if you look at the computer, if you look at me on the computer screen, You're going to be aware of me, that's fine, but you're also going to be aware of everything else that's in your office.
Okay, yes.
Because it's in your peripheral vision. So you can put your hands down, Cindy. If you look like you're in a hostage situation, somebody's pointing a gun at you. I'm looking at the computer, but out of the corner of my eye, I can see my spare laptop, I can see my spare monitor, I can see my glasses case, I can see my cup of tea, I can see a cuddly toy, I can see all kinds of things, none of which are scary. So what I'm doing is translating from, here is a scary thing in this room, to, here is a room full of things, one of which happens to be scary. So you're diluting the effect of the scary thing, and extended awareness. Absolutely right. But there's a cuddly toy in my office, right? Stop it. There is a cuddly toy in my office. Seriously, right? I use it for cleaning the monitor. There you go. Okay.
Hang on, how did you see it?
Because I mentioned cuddly toy in that rant I just had. I didn't. Okay, so I use it for it's for cleaning the screen. It's not just a cuddly toy. Okay, but what you do is you kind of take the whole room rather than just your audience, but it has an additional benefit too, which is nothing to do with the nerves thing. The nerves thing is great, but it's got an additional benefit, which is it means that out of the corner of your eye, you can see those parts of your audience who are struggling to understand what you're saying. And that means your next sentences are going to be directed at that part of your audience. So, for example, I'm over here, I'm facing this part of the audience. Out of the corner of my eye, I see that somebody's looking quizzical or lost or bored, whatever, which means that the next part of my presentation is kind of over to that part of the audience, and then over the corner of my eye, I notice that someone else is struggling, so I talk to their things, which means that you're always presenting to the part of your audience which is struggling the most or is engaged the least. And that's
a good way of also actually making you feel as if you're engaging with all the audience.
Exactly. But from the audience's point of view, what it means is that you are always talking to the people who need most help. Okay. Now that's nothing to do with the nerves thing. That's just being nice to your audience kind of thing. But it's an additional benefit to the provisional PV peripheral vision thing.
But then also, if you're helping somebody, you're then relaxing your nerves anyway, because you've then realised that if somebody needs help.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's an enormous thing. Realising that your job is medium, not anything else. Nobody comes to hear you speak unless your name is Bill Clinton or Hillary Clinton or whatever, Bill Gates. Nobody comes to hear you speak. They come to hear your message. Your job is to give them the message and get the hell out of your own way. Right? Your job is to give the audience what they need in the way that they need it. That's all, right? Is that making sense? Right? So if there's a little bit of me that's going that nerves is a form of arrogance because people think you're looking at people think you're looking at the speaker. They're not. They're looking at the speaker as a speaker, but not as the person for the. What do you mean? What do you mean? When did he sneak in? I've been here all the time.
Oh no, we're talking about Tim.
Okay. Fair enough. Okay, so that presentation, that peripheral vision thing, a really, really powerful tool. Really powerful tool. It's no problem, Bransman. And the big advantage of it is it's going to work like that. It's going to work straight away. The only thing you've got to remember is that you use it rather than just go through them. And the good news is, by the way, you don't actually have to do this from the front of the stage. You don't go, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. My name is Dr. Simon Raybould. You don't need to do that. That's just an exercise to draw your peripheral vision to your attention. And once you've got that, once you know about your PV, once you know about your peripheral vision, then you just use the technique. You don't have to do the whole arm wavy thing. The hard part is remember to use it.
But it could be a very, very good icebreaker.
It could. It's a very good way of dealing with presentations. You will never get asked to make a second presentation.
But is icebreakers a good idea for nerves?
Depends.
And if so, is there a good one?
Okay. That's a huge one. That's an enormous one. It depends upon the speaker and the audience, and it's one of my pet hates. Okay. I'm going to explain this using Myers-Briggs terminology, but take any terminology, any psychometric terminology you like. Okay. Half the population are introverts, half the population are extroverts. Okay, now in this context, I don't mean a definition of extrovert where you go and dance on the table at parties and introverts don't go to parties, right? So extroverts are dancing on the table, introverts are stood there not talking to each other. That's not the definition I'm using. I'm using a much more psychological definition of where you get and spend your mental energy. Extroverts get their mental energy from talking, thinking, doing, interacting. Introverts get their mental energy from being inside their own heads. Okay. Now I've simplified horribly, so forgive me, those of you who know what I'm talking about. But that's the starting point. Okay. If you are an extrovert, then talking to your audience before you start, chatting, pressing the flesh, saying hi, all of that kind of thing, that's great for the audience, and it's great for you because you get a buzz out of interacting with the audience and meeting your audience. But if you are an introvert, then talking to your audience before you go live starts to drain your mental energy before you go live. It just knackers you before you go on stage. So I'm personally, psychologically, I'm an introvert. I mean, yeah, my job is to be extrovert, but psychologically, I'm an introvert. So the way I get my mental energy straight is by going somewhere quiet before I go on stage, going inside my own head, having a couple of moments to myself before I go do that. So this idea of getting out there with icebreakers and saying hello to people and all that kind of stuff, yes, there are huge advantages to it, but it also has that massive disadvantage of burning you out or risking burning you out before you actually even get on stage. So it's a huge one, and I'm very, very lucky because I have people that I can take with me who can get between me and an audience, who represent me, who speak upon my behalf, and who can make the audience think that they have spoken to me because they're speaking to my team, as it were, and still give me the headspace to get clear.
So what you've actually done is you've just sort of like given me a bit of an aha moment, because there's been times that we've had speakers that they just want to go in. And they literally arrive about 5 minutes to go straight on the stage. Where there are others that like to go there, spend the whole day, get to know people, and then go on the stage.
Well, the people that arrive 5 minutes before they go on stage, it might be because they're incompetent and logistically disorganized. So that's always a possibility. But you do have your okay. So my take on that is I will always arrive at least, no matter what the gig, I will always be at least an hour early. Even if it's a 9 o'clock start, I'll always be there at sort of 8 o'clock, 7:30ish. But as the gig gets closer, once I'm set up, I withdraw into my old world just a little bit. But I've just realized that I went off on one of my rants and I didn't actually answer your question about icebreakers. What I was going to say was that the whole issue of introversion thing works differently for the audience as well. Icebreakers work much more easily and comfortably for your audience if the audience is a bunch of extroverts than if they are introverts. And if you have a bunch of people who are introverted in the audience and you try and get them to stand up and cheer and do all that horrible American stuff that never works for anybody, you get this kind of, they pull down and they get inside themselves. So if you are going to do icebreakers for I just realized I've insulted the most powerful nation on earth. Excellent. Good start, Simon. If you are going to use icebreakers, you have to make sure they're very, very carefully crafted for the audience and they work for the audience's perspective. So they're not just energy raisers. They have to be much more carefully thought through than that. And you have to allow allow the audience to engage at the level they want to engage with. Okay, so you can't do the physical stand up and talk to the random stranger next to you because that just freaks out half the population. It's got to be something subtle. And for me personally, I always kind of tweak it for the content to get them thinking about what it is what's going on.
And that's definitely a UK thing, isn't it? Because I know Ian was saying now he's in Australia and that he actually gets the icebreakers to do their work and not his, really.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and it's very, very culturally normed. So stereotypically, we would think of Australians and Americans as being much more out there than Brits are. So maybe the rules are different in different parts of the world. I'm making the assumption here that I'm speaking from the UK, and I'm kind of we are not. I'm making a sweeping generalization. I'm aware that I'm making a sweeping generalization. Don't shoot me.
Would anyone like to jump in and join us? There's Ian.
Well, if you don't jump in, I'm going to carry on giving people tools and ideas and things. So feel free to jump in or not, whichever suits anybody else.
Well, I've said jump in, but for some reason...
Oh no, more technical.
No, try again.
Travel the 5 seasons to make it here. Thank you, Ricky. Dominic speaking. Yes, it's been buggy the last 90 minutes. That's Cindy and I we discovered that when we tried to get in because Blab was doing a server refresh or something. So yeah, we know about that. So in the lack of anybody jumping in, then Cindy, shall I carry on and give people another tool?
Hang on. And yes, if you carry on giving another tool whilst I just.
Okay, I'm going to talk then about a tool called visualization, and for anybody who's heard of the work of Pavlov, you'll be familiar with this, and you can kind of see where I'm going with this straight away. But I just want you to think for a second: is there anything in your life, preferably that happens daily, that makes you just go, and you have what I'm going to call it an R moment, that moment when you just completely relax and chill out and stuff. So it could be when you get home, or when you see the kids, or something. Whoops, here comes Leanne. All right.
Oh.
Yay!
Hey. Welcome. Hello, you're on. Hi.
I was not expecting to jump in. 1 minute the seat was just nothing, and hey presto,
and now you're there.
So
you're there.
Hi.
So what is it you wanted to say? That's the killer question.
Well,
or are you just
I didn't really particularly want to say anything.
Okay.
No, sorry, I had actually just clicked, and I thought, well, you're saying, for someone to jump in, Cindy, and so I just clicked, and yeah, I did, and so sorry, I apologise for looking so startled.
No need to apologise. That's cool. You're welcome.
Simon, what I was going to say is I am Australian, and when I said in there we're not all like that, I was actually joking because I'm very much an extrovert. Just about, I don't think there's anything introvert about me at all. But it was actually really interesting, though, your comment about the difference between the extroverts and introverts is about where they get their energy from and where their energy gets expended. And so from the perspective of I'm very much, I will turn up and I will interact with people all day, and that just feeds my energy. Whereas, I certainly do have friends that are well and truly introverted, and they will be fine while they're speaking. But yes, they will. Someone just said trust an Aussie to jump in without anything to say.
Yeah, is it worth mentioning? I'm in the UK. Should we mention the cricket at this point, or shall we just glide?
Okay. No, it actually doesn't bother me. So no, cricket's not my thing. So
yeah, because if I mention the cricket, you'll mention the rugby. Yeah.
No, you can bag us to your heart's content. That's fine. But no. So yeah. So no, that was just what I was thinking when you were talking about the difference between the introvert and the extrovert from the perspective of turning up and speaking.
Yeah, and it's absolutely enormous because we get in the car after a gig perhaps, and if I've got one of my team with me, particularly I'm thinking of one called Claire, she will get in the car with me absolutely buzzing from the excitement of performing. I will get in the car to go back to our hotel rooms absolutely wiped out with the effort of performing, and we've both been in the same room at the same time with the same people doing the same thing, and it's just hit us in different ways.
Yeah.
And the beauty of that is that Claire is very much more easy to engage with an audience than I can. I tend to concentrate much more on my message and less on the audience, and Claire concentrates much more on the audience and less on. I'm simplifying horribly, but you can see the
yeah.
Absolutely.
Do you want me to jump out, Cindy, and see whether someone else can jump in?
Yeah, I'm trying to get Steve, and I'm trying to get Dina in as well.
Okay. Well, do you want to go back? Shall I go back and finish off talking about anchoring while you get those guys in? Is that going to be okay?
Yeah. If Dina and Ian try to get in, and Steve, because we've got a list. Hey.
Oh, wrong picture of me. Hang on.
Hang on.
It looks suspicious like one of the old Doctor Who's, but okay.
No problem. What I'm going to do is quickly, if I do that, Dina, then hopefully, if I do that now, you should see that you're a co-host, and it should hopefully allow you to come in as well.
Well, welcome, Steve. Hello.
Thank you.
Steve had a question earlier.
Hello, Cindy and Simon. It has a nice ring to it, by the way, Cindy and
Simon. Yeah, it's worth pointing out that we're not married.
Okay. So, I would like to publicly declare that I'm an expert at listening to speakers. Certainly not an expert at speaking.
Okay, there are fewer of you than you think.
And the reason is I go to church on a Sunday, so I'm hearing speakers every week, some good, some bad.
Yeah.
So my question to you is, and I asked this on a similar blab earlier today, so it'd be interesting to compare notes. Do you have any tips and ideas for keeping them wanting at the end of the end of the speech? Do you think that's a good idea?
up to a point, happy to go. That's slightly off topic in terms of dealing with nerves and things.
Sorry.
But happy. Sorry, no problem. No problem. Just happy to go slightly down that route. Up to a point. For me, a presentation is about getting people to change what they do, change what they think, change how they behave, and whatever works to do that is the right thing to do. So if leaving them wanting more is the right thing to do to get them to change their behavior, then leave them wanting more. If giving them something that's self-contained and done is the right thing to do in order to get them to change their behavior and the way they think and stuff, then that's the right thing to do. And that's a really irritating answer to your question, I know, because basically it boils down to it depends.
Yeah.
But so it's a question of thinking what it is that you're trying to achieve. So, for example, I very often will leave things hanging in the air during a presentation, maybe a provocative question that I throw in towards the end, because that gets people to come and talk to me. Simon, you never wrapped up the idea about such and such.
Nice.
Because it gets them coming to talk to me. If I'm trying to do a much more salesy presentation, something along those lines. But if I'm trying to get people to change their behaviors completely, then they need to know everything they need to know to change that behavior. So, for example, if I'm being commissioned to make a presentation about how to use a different piece of software, then they need to know two things. They need to know, firstly, why they should use that new piece of software. And the second is how they should use that piece of software. And I can't leave them hanging at the end of that. They've got to know the answer to both those questions. So the long and the short of it is it depends on what it is you're trying to do.
Yes. And the other thing I want to add to that is you kept me engaged during that little time we've been speaking together, which is the other important part of speaking.
Well, that's very flattering. The money is in the post. If you just send me a message privately with your snail mail address, I will send you some English currency.
All right. Thanks very much, Simon. Cindy, I'll pop off.
Very welcome, Steve. Thank you.
Okay. Perhaps we can only have one extra person at the moment then.
It's possibly the size of my ego is already taking over that second seat. That's what's doing it. Oh, hello.
Hey.
Hi, Dinah. Is that how you pronounce it?
It's
I hope
Dina.
Dina. Okay. Hi. Welcome.
It was so long to get in here. Hi there, guys.
Hi. Welcome.
Hello.
Thank you. Good to
Hey,
see you
Ian's
all.
here
Where
too.
are you guys? Where are you based? Are you all UK?
Full house. I'm in the north of England in the UK. Yeah.
I'm in the south and Ian's in Australia and you are?
I am in south of London.
All right. Okay. So you're even souther of Cindy. Might be France then, I think.
No, I'm in the middle.
Okay.
I'm in the middle.
Right. Okay. And Ian, which bit of Australia are you from, man?
Melbourne.
Really south.
Okay, so south as it gets then.
Almost. We've got Tassie further south. Tasmania.
Yeah.
Tasmania people's home.
Yeah. Fair enough.
And Antarctica. We've got a bit of that too.
Yeah. Okay. Dinah, you popped on. Did you pop on with a question, or were you looking to looking to say hello, or did you want to criticize or comment on anything I've said, or criticize me, or point out I've made a mistake, or tell me I've made a mistake, or something? Because if you're not, Ian's going to. I can just see in his eyes he's going to take issue with something I'm going to say. Was there something you wanted to say, Dinah? Is there anything in particular you wanted to pick me up on?
It's Dina.
Dina, sorry.
Dina.
Sorry.
Dina. You know, my actual name is Constadina, and I've been using it for a very long time. And finally said, okay, people still struggle with that. I said, I'm Greek, by the way. So it's Constantina Sadorinho, both names very long. And I said, finally, okay, I'll cut it short. How my family is calling me Dina. And I said, people still get it wrong.
If it's any consolation, after 33 years of marriage, I've just called my wife by the wrong name. So, and for anybody who's listening, if you send me money, I will tell you how to talk your way out of calling your wife by the wrong name.
Oh, that's a big one, Simon.
It was about as bad as it could get. It was not a happy story. It really wasn't a happy story.
Anyhow, yeah, I talk about this topic quite a bit, and I work with clients because mindset is one of the things I try and help small business owners in finding their own confidence, not only in speaking or presenting, but really promoting themselves because without that right mindset, it just cannot move forward. You cannot succeed in your business if you don't have the confidence to promote. So giving them quick tips, quick cures, if you like, and then they're long-term. I don't know. Can we call it cures? I don't know. So those are the first aid.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think you're right. There's a difference between the quick tips that I'm giving people today and the long-term stuff. But the long-term stuff is they have to believe in what they are saying. And if you don't believe in what you're saying, there's absolutely no point in saying it, because audiences will smell that you are afraid. They will smell a lack of authenticity. They will smell that you don't know what you're talking about. I've just seen something popped up with, is it Leandro? Bet not even an icebreaker worked on that one when I called my wife by the wrong name. An icebreaker, my love, is exactly what was necessary because the temperature of the room dropped to about 0 degrees when I called my wife by the wrong name.
Yeah, definitely. You have to be congruent with what you are saying. But sometimes it comes out as if you're not congruent because you are lacking that confidence.
Yeah, absolutely. And honestly, that's why I do what I do, because I tend not to want to try and work with professional speakers and I'm going to blow my head off here at the Professional Speaking Association, because a lot of them speak because they want to speak. And they don't always have something to say. The people I tend to work with are those people who have something to say, but they've got to say it because it's part of their job, or because they're driven by a passion to say something that they need to, that they need to say, as it were, rather than people who speak for the sake of it.
I'm surprised that you're saying that, and I'm surprised. I'm not doubting you of the truth of it, but because I love speaking, but why do you love speaking? I love speaking because I love sharing what I have to say. So it's difficult for me to imagine that there are people there that they want to speak for the sake of speaking.
It's a career, it's a profession. It's people go into speaking in the same way as people go into accounting. They think, how do I earn money? What shall I do? I'm good at this, therefore I'll do it. And it's a way of earning money. And if you're good at it, and if you've got the right connections, and if you're lucky, and all of that kind of jazz, you can make good money out of it. And good luck to those people. There's nothing wrong with doing that. I have all the time in the world for that. Some of my really, really, really dearest friends are those kinds of people, but those aren't the kind of people I work with. I tend to work much more with people like your small businesses who've got something really passionate that they need to say, and I give them the tools and the confidence to say it.
I guess that happens with all professions, and not only with speaking, isn't it? You can make big money in all professions. People try online marketing because they believe they're going to make the big money. People are, so it's not just for the speaking. I guess speaking can be just as any other profession. But coming back to the topic, I don't know if you have already shared that. I would say the tips, as a first aid tips, I would suggest is, and don't laugh at that. People say, because it's so simple, but it's so effective in anything that has to do with a stressful situation, is breathing.
Yeah, that's down on my list.
Slow, deep inhaling and exhaling. People say, because it's something that we do all the time. Mind you, it's something that we are not doing all the time properly.
Spot on, my love. Absolutely spot on. And the differences between breathing here and breathing your gut. Absolutely spot on. Absolutely spot on.
It has both psychological, mental, emotional, and physical effect on a person. So before you go and speak, if you sit and take some few deep, slow breaths, automatically it will calm down the nerves. So this is one tip I suggest as a first aid before
can I pick up on that? I think you're absolutely right, but I want to take it further.
Can I finish my points?
Sorry, go on. There's something I want to add on to that. You're right, but go for it.
Yeah. Keep it in the back of your mind, because then I will lose the track of my thought. So this is like the calming down the nerves. And another thing that I recommend is using the power poses. The power poses. I forgot her name now.
Yeah, Amy Cuddy is the name that you're looking for.
Amy Cuddy, right. So a couple of minutes, go to the toilet, nobody sees you, and take one of, the Superwoman, the Superman pose, for instance, standing with the legs a little bit open and hands on your sides. And that as well has physiological effects on how you feel, and it's been documented, it's been researched as being able to help you feel more confident. Now, these 2 tips I would say as a first date, but as more of a long term, my suggestion is to find out why are you not confident in presenting or on speaking, what's stopping you, what's behind that. So finding really the roots. What is it? People usually say, I'm afraid that I'm going to embarrass myself. I'm going to say something stupid. People won't like what I have to know what I have to say. People won't like me. They won't like the way I look or the way I dress. People will feel, I might say the wrong thing. I'm not good enough. So you need to find these things, and this is where I'm working with people, getting rid of all these limiting beliefs and fears in connection to yourself. And the technique I use to help them do that is emotional freedom technique, or EFT tapping, which has very high levels. I mean, I know different techniques, but this is one of the techniques that has very high level of success with people in help them get rid of all these fears. So this is, well, actually it's tapping points of the meridians. If you have heard, it's the same system that acupuncture and acupressure are using. So as a first aid as well, before you go and present something, if you're feeling anxious, by tapping these points while you're feeling that emotion, again, the physiological and psychological effects on that will automatically help you calm down your nerves. And again, the more long term would be, to sit by yourself or with a practitioner to be able to get rid of this reprogramming of the mind.
You're absolutely right. There's a load of things to kind of to put on with that. The first is you're absolutely right. People need to know why it is they're speaking before they stand up there. It's going right back to what you said about 5 minutes ago when I tried to follow. It's not just big breaths that the important thing. It's low breaths. It's breaths into and through using the diaphragm. That's what makes the physiological difference. You're absolutely right. But it's worth mentioning to people that you don't want just them to take big breaths, because if you do, they just go, and that kind of just makes it worse.
Shallow breath.
Yeah, exactly. Breath. Yeah, it can be huge, but it's kind of at the top of the chest, and what you need for them is to breathe down in the diaphragm. Absolutely down the diaphragm. Craig, hi, welcome.
We've got Craig with us now.
Hello.
Hello.
It's been trying to get in for ages.
Knocking on the door, and it wasn't happening, but now I'm here. Hi. Simon, I just wanted to mention something that you talked about before, the fact that sometimes it's necessary for a speaker to get out of the way in order to deliver the message. In other words, get out of the way of themselves or of their personal story. I'm actually giving a short presentation tomorrow, and I'm sitting here planning it now while I'm listening to you guys, which is interesting. But they've asked me, because I'm a podcaster and I've had some recent success, so they're asking me to speak about my journey. I don't particularly like speaking about myself and blowing my own trumpet, but that seems to be the idea of the talk they want me to give. So my question is, in that sort of situation, it kind of has to be about you, doesn't it? It has to be about your journey and what you've done, and in order to get that message across.
Up to a point, yeah. But the question, what's more important from your audience's perspective? Sorry, I'm going to get all intense here. Right? What's really important from the audience's perspective is not you. They don't care about listening to Craig. No offense intended here. I'm going to be slightly sarcastic here, but if you could put up a talking chimpanzee, they would listen to a talking chimpanzee, so long as that talking chimpanzee was giving them the tools that they need to apply to do what you've done.
So are you saying then I need to kind of cleverly put into my presentation tools that they can then go away and use in the guise of me speaking about my journey and my success.
Yeah, absolutely. So a traditional way of doing that would be, instead of talking about yourself and the story, the run through that you've made, the chronology that you've made, a good way of doing it would be I tried this tip and it didn't work, this trick and it didn't work. This trick, however, got me an increase of X hundred podcast listeners. I tried this tip and it got me 200 more speakers, and yada, yada, yada. And you can use yourself as the case study or as the example or as stories to back it up. It's even better if it's somebody else's stories and statistics, of course. But that's not possible because they've asked you to be to be on there. But you can use yourself as examples and stories. But I mean no offense by this, Craig, but I'm not going to turn into that and listen to your story. I'm going to turn into your podcast because I want to hear what you have done, so that I can go away and use it.
So speaking about my business, it's as important to speak about the failures and what I've learned from the failures as it is to speak about the successes and blow my own trumpet.
Yeah, hell yeah, absolutely. Because it's always better to learn from other people's mistakes. And if you've done something that's bombed, then it's going to... Yeah, absolutely. It means that I'm not going to do that. You know, is that making sense?
It makes absolute sense.
Yeah, it's about what you have done, not you. You are an example of those tools. You are not the tools. I'm getting all pretentious and stuff, but is that making sense? Are you with me?
It makes a lot of sense. It makes a lot of sense, yeah.
Does it help?
It does. I'm now going to go back to the beginning and reorganize my slides. start from square one.
It's important that you share your story, Craig, as well. I mean, don't take most of your presentation, but people do like to know who is behind the tools. How you have achieved it, your journey. I think it is important that you share your journey, and then they can relate your personal story with the tools you are providing. It will make more sense. So you just have to blend. People like storytelling. So tell your story.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. So, Dina, it's obviously important to make that contact and that personal contact with the audience so that they kind of feel they like you. But then I think what Simon's saying is get out of the way as soon as possible and just put the information across so that they can then learn from the successes and failures that you've had along the way once they like you and they're listening to you and they're tuned in.
Yeah, Dina's right.
Because your story will be the connector between, the topic and the content.
Right.
Absolutely. That's what Swanita is suggesting as well on the bar. She's saying take people on your journey with pointers, examples, and information.
Yeah. It's the information is the key thing. That's what they're there for. That's what they're turning up for. I mean, no offense to my audience, to anybody's audience, as I say this, but audiences are sitting there thinking, what's in it for me? With the exception of your mother and your sister and your best mate, nobody is sitting in the audience thinking, I hope Simon does well. They're all sitting there thinking, what is he going to give me that I can take away and use? And that's the key thing that you have to give them.
That makes sense. I'll jump out and let somebody else do. Just want to say that I really like this blab because it's so interactive. Everybody's queuing up, waiting to get in. When I do a blab, it's like there's nobody there. Nobody trying to get in. It's just me talking.
It's almost like when I talk to my kids, there's nobody listening. Cheers, Craig. Good to meet you, man.
Okay, I'll go as well. Thanks for letting me share my points there. And
you're welcome.
Good to meet you.
Good to have met you. Hi. That was quite fun. That was quite energetic. I need a cup of tea. Bear with me just one second. There was something I was saying before it all got kind of interactive and stuff and I'm really happy. People want to pop in. It'd be great. Somebody else wants to chip in? I'm looking at the list of people on the right. Cindy, is there anybody else that said they want to pop in and
yes, we are in the UK, Juanita. Yes.
We're in different parts of the UK.
We are in different parts, but we're caught up on all the questions so far.
Okay, cool. Okay. There's a technique that I just wanted to explain and explore with people and see if they find it useful called anchoring. And it's arguably the most powerful tool that I know. The downside is that it's not going to work immediately. It's not going to work like that. You have to practice it. And I want you to think, guys, of a moment that happens in your day, preferably every day, that makes you just go, and chill out and relax. Okay, so it could be when you get home. It could be the first glass of Pinot in the evening. It could be when you get your kids to bed. It could be when you see your dog. Anything that just makes you go, okay. And I want you to call that your R moment. Something
I think it's when they go to school.
And you can got rid of the little beggars. Yeah. Okay, so that's your R, and you just take a moment, a breath to catch. Yeah, okay. Now, I want you to cast your mind back to the work of a guy called Pavlov. Have you come across Pavlov, Cindy? Okay, so
yes, Pavlov's dogs.
Okay, now if you know Pavlov's, you can see where this is going, can't you?
Yes.
See, you know how Pavlov got the dogs to have a hormonal response just by waving the bell? Well, let's call ringing the bell an anchor. Okay. And he trains the dogs to have a hormonal response, salivating. Okay, that's the dog's R moment. That salivating is the dog's R moment. So you've got your R moment, that moment when the kids have gone to school or whatever.
Yep.
And the anchoring technique is to find something the equivalent of Pavlov ringing the bell. Okay, so that every time you have that R moment, you do your ringing the bell thing. And you do that every day for, it depends on different people. Some people it's a few days, some people it's a few weeks. But by the time you've done that for as long as it takes, what happens then is that you get to the point where you can just do your ringing the bell thing, and your body has this Pavlovian hormonal reaction to release the hormones that you get in your R moment.
So when you're in times of stress, you can actually just, because I think I was taught to take the thumb, fold it, and squidge it.
But if you don't know why you're doing that, it doesn't work. So
no. But that associating it with an emotion.
So you find those moments where things are really going well for you, and you do that. That's cool. Bill Clinton and Tony Blair are reputed to do that. Mine is to rub the inside of my wedding ring. That has a double advantage, of course, of reminding me of all the good things in my life, the house, home, and all of that kind of jazz. But it
crazy is to eat chocolate.
2 squares of 70% dark chocolate. I'm kind of liking that, but it does clog your voice up. It makes it harder to speak when you've got. Okay.
No, that's toffee.
Okay. Oh, damn it! I knew I was doing something wrong. Spreading chocolate on my toast, is that not how it works?
Yeah, let's not go down there.
It's a hugely powerful technique once you have got it working. And the rules are that you want to find this R moment, and then you do the same thing. You do your same anchor every time that happens. Every time that happens. And your anchor wants to be something that you do, not something you have. Because if it's something you have, then sod's law is that you'll not have it at certain times. It wants to be something new, because it's easier to build a new skill on a neutral background rather than no background. And the third thing it has to do, it's got to be something that's sufficiently subtle to mean you can do it in front of an audience. All right? I mean, you can anchor to standing on one leg with your hands up like that if you like, but it kind of looks stupid in front of your audience. So it's got to be, that's why I do this, because I can do this without my audience seeing that that's what I'm doing. Okay, so that's an enormous, just a hugely powerful, and it's not a psychological trick; it's a physiological kind of response. Is it, Brandon? Unless you're in a dojo, what? I've missed a conversation there. Is that chocolate in a dojo?
Dojo. No, it's coming back down to, because Vanita actually said, when would you use the anchoring? And it comes back down to, once you've trained your body to recognize that when you're in a good place, do something. So I do that. Bill Clinton does that.
Apparently. I've never asked him.
Tony Blair might do that. But it does mean that when you're then in the stress, as in on the stage, just about to give your presentation, or in that sales meeting, that if you then do your anchor, that or whatever it is, it calms the body down, because it takes it back to, right, okay, it's one of that. This moment is actually another of those moments.
It's a safe moment. It's a happy moment. Yeah. Absolutely. And it's a relaxation trigger. Okay, to Brandon's just said it's a relaxation trigger. Absolutely. But the key thing about it is that you do it often enough to mean that it becomes a conditioned hormonal response rather than a psychological response. Because if it's just at the level of a psychological response, it won't work when you're on stage and scared. You have to do it enough to get to the point where it becomes a physiological hormonal response.
Okay, so Tony Robbins uses it all the time as well.
Apparently, I don't know. I've never spoken to Tony Robbins.
Oh yeah, no, we don't do the Clinton point.
Oh, that's a different thing. He's using that for a whole bunch of different reasons. He's not using that to calm down. He's using that to make a particular moment. And I can do it all I like because the camera's at my face. You can't see that I'm actually making rude gestures just underneath the camera thing, and I'm pointing down and doing all sorts of things, but the camera can't see it.
But it doesn't do anything for the nerves. All that does is aggravates and heightens the nerves when you're starting to be aggressive.
Yes,
as I understood.
Yes, it does, absolutely. So it's Bill Clinton is reputed to be the world's most highest paid public speaker. Now, far be it from me to criticize somebody who's getting millions of dollars per gig doing that kind of thing. So I'm not going to say that he shouldn't be doing the finger pointy thing, but I'm pretty damn sure he's not doing it because he's nervous. I'm sure he's doing it for a different reason.
Yeah. Anyway.
Somebody's pointing out Tony Robbins trains it. Yes, he does. I'm cheaper than Tony Robbins.
Unless you want to go on and be in the same room as 10,000 other people.
I charge less. I charge less per day than Tony Robbins charges per hour, and you'll get small groups with me, whereas Tony Robbins there are 5,000 people in the room. Should we get off? Let's stop doing the advert. Let's give.
Let's stop doing the advert. Yes.
Okay. Sorry, Cindy, go on.
I was going to say because I've noticed we've gone on far longer than we were. Planning.
What time is it? Oh, we have, haven't we? Hell's teeth! I'm supposed to be at the gym in 10 minutes.
Oh well, this is exercise for your mind. Okay.
Yeah, that's not going to cut it with my personal trainer, believe me. Cindy, I've really enjoyed it, and it's been it's so much fun. But I've also got, if people want it, I've got half a dozen different tools that we could come back to another time if that's going to be of any use to anybody.
Okay, and can we just take this last question from Craig, and then what we'll do is we'll have to schedule another one and sort of like pick up on some of the things and take down, because it seems anchoring seems to be quite a bit of a good one.
Well, let's find out if people like it first before we. If people like it, yes, let's do another one. If they hate it, then I'll pretend that I've never done it. Once you're taking away Tony Robbins paces up and down in front of an audience, well, he sure as hell isn't doing it because he's nervous. He's doing it for other reasons. I'm guessing, and I am guessing here because I've never spoken to him, I'm guessing he's doing it for one of two reasons. One is because he's doing big stage stuff, so he has to be seen to be doing something that's high energy. Or the other possible reason is that he might be, and I've not looked into this, he might be using some rather clever stagecraft, because he might be just saying, over here is a problem, and he walks across the stage, and here is the solution. And then he goes back to, yep, and here is the problem. You're not, here's bad American accent, you're not unleashing the power within. But if I stand over here, I can tell you how to release the power within. So you need to spend more money.
Yeah, I've seen some people do that when they're talking about the past and the future, the past and the present.
It could be a stagecraft thing that he's doing, past, present, and future, or it could be problem, solution, or it could just be that he's just wanting to be big and own the stage. Somebody just said just owning the stage. That could just be as simple as he's got a big stage, he's a big fella, and he's just dominating. It could be something as simple as just forcing his authority on top of that. Or it could be, it could be, as somebody's just said, it could be that he needs the toilet. It's unlikely, I think, given that he could probably afford his own private gold-plated toilets, but it's entirely possible, I suppose.
Okay. Anyway, and on that note, we're going to have to let you go. And
yeah, please.
Can I have a quick show of number ones if you'd like us to kind of carry on with part 2 of this?
Well, I don't think there's enough people here to just... Oh, that's
yeah, there's enough. There's enough. As long as we get 2 or 3, that's fine.
Okay, hang on. Can I vote for myself? Yes, I can put a number 1 up. Excellent. I voted for myself.
Okay, well, thank you very much for your time, and I hope you don't get too much told off by your gym.
I don't think it's that. I think it's my kids are likely to tell my wife now that I've confessed that I've called her by the wrong name. I think, frankly, I'm more scared of her than I am of anybody else.
Okay.